Do you record?
Thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you for joining the very first webinar 2021. Our guest today is Vincent Merk, talking about extending the paradigm from diversity and inclusion to belonging and well-being. And Vincent, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
We are thrilled to have you with us. And yes, you see, SIETARians know that the very beginning is always about chatting a little bit and using the chat function here. We have currently 92 participants from Cambridge, from Marburg in Germany, from Prague, from Hamburg. Very warm welcome. You are very, very welcome to write down where the feet touch the floor. So we have also Helsinki, Stuttgart, also people from France, Lille, Valencia, Spain, and Wuhan. A very warm welcome. So many people from Istanbul, from Brittany, from Amsterdam, the Netherlands again. So San Diego, California, welcome. We are having participants and guests from Canada, Ottawa, from all over the world, not only Europe. So SIETAR Europa is really thrilled that this theme resonates so much with you. My name is Joanna Zell. I'm happy to greet you on behalf of the communication virtual team. And my co-host is Steve, who is supporting us behind the scenes. Thank you, Steve, very, very cordially. For those of you who haven't joined us so far, and I see we have also participants from India, so also, you know, considering the difference in time zones, a very warm welcome, bonjour, bonsoir, guten Abend, guten Tag, ni hao, and dobry wieczór.
Wieczór.
Yeah.
Don't forget that, yeah.
So, Vincent, your theme actually generated lots of discussions, and the whole journey with moving from diversity and inclusion to belonging and well-being started with your article on the LinkedIn. And I'm just posting here the link to your article in the chat window for all the participants, so that actually after it's over, you can also have a look at the text and maybe even add a comment. There are 54 comments currently and 150 views, so it's a very, very popular text. And we are really, really curious to hear from you, Vincent, to hear more, and are really pleased that you are going to guide us through this paradigm shift today. And when I talked to Vincent before the webinar, he proposed that you are very welcome to write down all your questions in the chat window during the presentation. And then halfway, we are going to have an opportunity to answer, yes, I cannot promise all of them, but some questions that are really the burning questions regarding the content. So Vincent, once again, the floor is yours, and we are very, very much looking forward to hearing from you. Enjoy.
Dziękuję, Joanna. Thank you. Good evening, good morning, good whatever to everybody. Yeah, and thank you, SIETAR Europa, for hosting me today. Extending the paradigm from diversity to and inclusion to belonging and well-being. Quite a program. maybe first, why this topic? Because, well, as Joanna was saying in the introduction, this has been a hot topic for quite a moment now, and certainly getting more and more interesting and various as well, diverse. And I thought I started about 3-4 years ago to think about it, and then I put my thoughts in this article that I published in July. But before that, I had already presented. I presented actually, I think it started in Malaga, in SIETAR, Spain. That was about more than 2 years ago. In Leuven last year as well. Well, last year in yeah, in 2019. So, and ever since I've been presenting and of course updating. I was certainly updated with the Corona crisis, and because this doesn't stand alone, this is a situation now we are in, and that of course impacts on all those aspects of diversity well-being. So I would certainly refer to that. Okay, maybe for those of you who don't know me, yeah, I'm just French and Dutch. So you can see according to the position of the flag, I can be the Dutch or French. If it's horizontal, it's Dutch. If it's vertical, it's French. So depending on the mood of the day, I can be the one or the other. Well, that's for the metaphor. Okay, let's get started. So what I'm going to do is first set the framework. The framework is this paradigm going from diversity to inclusion, belonging, and well-being. And how do I extend the paradigm is by literally let's say putting the dots, connecting the dots of this diversity approach. So this approach of the nine areas is in a way how to extend the paradigm. So I'm going to talk about diversity, of course, inclusion, belonging, and ultimately well-being, but using those 9 areas to actually put the contents on it, on this framework. So you have the framework, and you have the different areas that I would connect, and these are areas of importance that I chose. I don't claim to be exhaustive, but I chose those areas because I think these are the areas we have to pay attention to when developing an inclusion, belonging, and well-being policy, whether you are in an institution, academia, or in business. My frame of reference will be more or less often the international classroom, which I've built up for years and years at my university in Eindhoven, but also it also applies to a business environment. I would argue, because there are no big differences when you deal with the diversity at the beginning. All right, this is basically what I wanted to say at the framework. Diversity and inclusion. Maybe just a preliminary remark here. Diversity for me is something you don't make. It's something that you, in a way, inherit. You have it. It's an act of nature. And think of the international classroom, of the international group, of a workforce in business. You have this diverse group in front of you, and what do you do with that? So for me, it's not the purpose to create diversity. It's the starting point of my thoughts. So it's present already. Yeah, and then of course you need to make a choice and take action, and make a choice and take some action to create inclusion. This is the thing, the active part you're going to do to deal with. Then the belonging, the sense of belonging, to be more complete. This is for me going deeper and broader into the process of inclusion. So once you have created some inclusion, you can go deeper and broader and create some more belonging. I will explain that, of course, what it is in due time. And finally, this well-being, indeed. That's something the ultimate goal. If all the further stages have been reached, this should, in theory, and also in practice, lead you to some well-being, whether it's collective or individual. Both of them. I will address both of them. All right. So this is again the framework, and let's now get started and go to the D. the D. So maybe a primary remark as well here. When I see diversity, I'm not going to talk about specific aspects of diversity. I'm going to talk about diversity as a whole. So I will not, for example, address gender issues particularly. It is, of course, one of the aspects of diversity. Same for, let's say, multidisciplinarity, sexual orientation. These are all, of course, aspects of diversity. I will not address them as such. This could be another webinar, whatever. This is now more the diversity in the classroom or in the team in general. So what's this diversity for me? I think the what I call the visible part. I think this is what is usually what we see. Age, gender, some ethnic background, some physical abilities or disabilities, etc. Dress code that you can see. So this is the first impression, the visible part. But of course, it goes beyond, and I also include that, of course, all kind of cognitive aspects, beliefs, visions, attitudes, conviction people have, knowledge, competencies. How do you manage talent, for example, life experiences we've had, learning styles. Are you autonomous or more independent or more depending? I mean, on the teacher, for example. Interdisciplinarity is also one important aspect, whether it is in business or in academia, and diverse socioeconomic background, sexual orientation, etc., etc. So this, I embrace the whole picture for diversity. And indeed, I also add that to that the COVID-19 time, the pandemic. Clearly, we've developed new competencies during the time that were maybe not visible as part of diversity, but that are now. How do we manage online communication? We may have a boss who was an excellent boss, an excellent leader in an on-site context, but now when everything, most things happen online, he or she just appears to be a very bad leader. That's possible. So we develop new competencies. We also develop new disabilities. I've had myself problem with my eyes, eye fatigue for a long time, and I now have glasses, for the computer, and which gives more rest to my eyes. So this is also something that I've developed during the pandemic. So as you see, this diversity is very broad, and again, the pandemic has added new competencies, new knowledge, new disabilities, etc., new leadership skills. All right. So diversity, as I said, an act of nature. You have it. What do you do with that? You want, of course, to move into the idea of inclusion. You need to create, as I said, take action, make a choice, take action, and create inclusion. The metaphor I often use, as you can see here, is this puzzle. And you have just bought a puzzle, you've put it on the table, and you want to assemble all the pieces. And you know that they will all fit somehow, but you have to, long patient game, you have to have every single piece of the puzzle fit into one another. So this is something that you will have to suddenly take action for. You make the choice of buying the puzzle, and you take action making the puzzle. That's how I see this process of going from the diversity you have on the table and develop this inclusion of putting all the things in the puzzle. So that's for the D of diversity. The next stage will be the I of intercultural culture. I will not bother a SIETAR audience with too much about culture, but I think this is certainly an area that needs attention. That's something where our raison d'être at SIETAR, obviously. I think now there's a lot more to that, but I think culture is still one aspect of it. I'm not going to bother you with the definition of culture. I just take one by Edgar Schein, which I like, which I often use, and also practice the reconciliation of dilemmas. So culture is the way in which a group of people solves problems and reconcile dilemmas. I think this is a to-the-point definition, which will help us also through the process dealing with problems and dilemmas. So I think this is like a starting point of to identify and frame what culture is about. Second stage here about culture is, of course, to see what are the different layers. Culture is like, as we know, like shifting panels. Sometimes we share it, sometimes we don't share it. We can share things temporarily. If I take now the audience here, people behind the scene, behind the screens here, all the the participants, and we all share a lot, but we don't share everything, obviously. So in a group, in an international classroom, you have to identify what are the sharing points. That's why I would say here, layers of culture. You can see a whole range. I don't try to be exhaustive here. The goal is, of course, to develop intercultural competence in Warwick. They call that global fitness. I think it goes beyond the intercultural competence. How do you fit all together? I think this is important to realize. So first of all, certainly identify what culture is about, what you do with culture, sorry, and frame it for obvious purposes. And ultimately, indeed, to develop intercultural competence. The next area for me, of attention importance in this journey is to look at the vision and personality. This is where the person, the individual, of course, comes into the game, so to say. We've had culture, we know that, but then we also need to move to the other side of the coin, which will be here, personality. We need to have a vision. I like to use the Shabbatot approach here. Your personality determines how you want to behave, and culture determines how you should behave. I think this explains in a very simple way this interface between culture and personality. Not everything is culture, as we know. Not everything is personality. It's very often an interface. It can be overlapping, it can be in conflict. It can be in a struggle. Sometimes personality wins over culture. Sometimes culture wins over personality, depending on the situation. And I think this also needs to be addressed, whether, again, you are in the international classroom with all those young people, or you're in business, in a group, in a team of international workforce. So identify different levels here. Not everything is personality. What do we share? What do we do not share? This is also a point of attention. Because diversity, as it says here, can be the greatest asset, but also a big challenge. If it doesn't work, it can be the biggest challenge. If it works and you you reach some cognitive diversity, you're already halfway your journey. Because if you reach cognitive diversity, you're already quite somewhere, right? I think you need to be more ambitious, going beyond cognitive diversity, but that's already quite something if you need to have people work together, at least. Yeah. The next stage will be the environment. I think clearly a very important aspect. We just don't stand alone. We all stand, work, live in an environment. I've put 4 pictures, illustration of the environment. On the top left, you have a quote I like from Margaret Mead. Let's say the green aspect of environment, respecting the planet. This is an ongoing topic, Paris agreements, etc. So I think this is also something we need to be conscious about, clearly. People, place, planet. The planet itself is not ours. We've kind of borrowed the planet, our environment, which used to be a lot bigger now. And I'll say a few things in a minute about that. The environment has in a way shrunk now. Our environment can become very local. We used to be very global, and now we become very local due to the pandemic. Different vision here. I put a picture of Eindhoven by night. Please do come and visit us. I think it's nicer by night than by day, because it's the city of light. It has also have the name City of Light, like Paris, but they are the more technical lights. So this is Philips. And then, of course, this cocooning, as I said, we've kind of be placed on a very local basis of cocooning our home, our base, which has completely changed for what we were dealing with in terms of environment about a year ago. So clearly, the importance of the environment in a few illustrations, and then what you do with that. And the next stage, we know our environment. Okay, so what do we do with that? And this is now, what is our relationship to environment? Are we trying to be in control of the environment? So we, like many of us have done in Western societies, we've been controlling not only the environment, but also all kind of processes. If it's in business, industrial processes, production processes, financial processes, but also educational processes, our lives in a way, all kind of processes. Or are we more not trying to control it and more subjugated to nature and trying to live in harmony with our environment? And this is where I put this this VUCA. I wrote also other article about VUCA. You can find them on and resilience. You can find them on LinkedIn as well. That's what I put the two versions of the VUCA to kind of give us some kind of a framework again on how do we deal with the environment, what do we do with this environment, which is in trouble at the moment. You have this the former VUCA, the old one, so to say. I think we all know the volatility, uncertainty, complex. Complexity and ambiguity and the fragile attitude. And I argue that we need to create this new VUCA with the responsiveness and resilience. And I'll say a few words later on that. And we need to co-create this new environment, this new VUCA, with having a vision. I mentioned that already before, on a individual level, but also on a more collective level. Our leaders also need this vision. Understanding this, what comes from it. We are still now in a situation where we don't quite understand what's going on, and this British variant, mutants we're not too sure about for the COVID. So we are still in this attitude of how we say halfway uncertainty and not understanding, and clarity and agility. I think these are also very important because these are more like action-minded, action-driven. And once we've understood things, we will be able to take action. But at the moment, I would say, in most countries in the world, we are still not mastering this. And this, of course, impacts any kind of inclusion activities that we have, whether it's on the macro or macro, micro, or very local level. So we need to make that that agile. And I'll say a few words that I said about resilience in a minute. I think this also will impact on what we need to do with that. So that's what I consider the environment, how important it is to clarify, I think, notions here, whether we want to control it, whether we just go with the flow. If you look at the past 9 months, year of the pandemic, you can see that those cultures which were not claiming to be in control, were more trying to live in harmony with on a local level, sometimes individual level, you can see that they may not have suffered or may not have suffered as much as people who were so-called in control of everything, control of the processes. And when this gets out of control, as it does, you can see that people certainly here are losing their temper. On an individual level, collectively, we all know why we suffer from lockdowns, curfews, etc. Okay, so I think this is also important to realize our attitude to the environment also determines how we look at it at the moment in pandemic times. And all these, of course, are elements which are not ideal to create some inclusion, whether it's on a small level, on a higher level. The next area I want to deal with, it's reflection. Again, individual level. I've noticed I'm a university lecturer. I deal a lot with a lot of young people, very young people, and also young adults. And I've seen that very often you realize that young people, don't have this habit, this attitude of reflecting a lot, and they are part of this what I call this fragmentation culture of the Z culture, where they change things very quickly. They very often don't go in depth. I'm generalizing, of course, but they don't really go in depth in things. They are part of this what I call the Z culture, fragmentation, and then they don't have the right moment, the right opportunity to reflect. And I think this is very important to create a reflection, whether it's self-reflection or more individual or more collective group reflection. And this learning, reflecting forward, backward, inward, inside, outward. And a reflection process, which I think we need to stimulate when we are in academia, but also the leader of a group helps also to prevent culture shock, clearly. Having self-confidence, self-inclusion, self-reflection will help the individual to prevent culture shock if you are in a situation of culture shock, potentially. So I think these two aspects are important as well, again, on the area of the individual here. The R of reflection. The next stage, the S of studying. you're a student, if you are in academia, if you could also be a young professional who is still studying, lifelong learning. I think this is a common concept nowadays. We always keep being a student studying. So these are also quite a few challenges and things you need to address. First of all, if you are indeed in a new institution, joining a new university, new institution, you will have to follow a new international curriculum online, most likely at the moment. I'll say a few words on that later on. You will have to adapt to new teaching and learning styles, what in Warwick they call the global, or what they've identified in their global education profiler, sorry. GP. So that's certainly one aspect also we need to address in trying to create inclusion in a classroom, for example. People who have different styles, the teacher, but also the learners who have different styles. I mentioned that before, autonomous style, learning style, for example. I know, for example, Dutch students are quite autonomous and they are self-sustainable, whereas other students, I see that with our international students, and often not very autonomous. They are used to having a supervisor looking over their shoulder all the time and guiding them. So this is something you have to address, dealing with inclusion in the classroom. And then the next stage will be the challenge-based learning. This is a new development in assessment. In a nutshell, challenge-based means that it's interdisciplinary. You put all kind of disciplines together, you give them a challenge to solve. And the difference with, for example, for me as a lecturer, when I give an assignment to my students, I already know the answer more or less. I want to drive them, to guide them into solving a problem, an issue, but I know the answer more or less. The challenge-based, which is a new, as I said, way to assess production, students' production, is you don't know the answer. It's multidisciplinary, and you have 2 or 3 disciplines and teachers together. We give the assignment to the students. They will make it, they will fabricate, they will look for the solution in an innovation space like we have in the university, and they will develop that into a challenge-based learning aspect. So this is certainly something we have to take into consideration. It's relatively new, so this is something you will have to explain, and this is not ideal to create inclusion because a lot of people we're not on the same wavelength here in educational terms. So also something we need to address here. And finally, as we know, and the need to set up a new local network and international. When you are new somewhere, you want to be included. You want to work from the diversity into inclusion, belonging. You will first of all have to set up, your local network. Teaching student, maybe a word on that as well. And nowadays, because it's becoming more and more online, and we're moving from, let's say, on-site teaching to online teaching. What we've done at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember my university, we moved within 1 week, we moved from on-site teaching to what I call this emergency remote teaching, the ERT, which is not what the ultimate goal should be of online learning. That would be the topic of another webinar. But we are still in the process of improving the processes around this ERT, but we're still not in online learning, certainly not. Yeah. I don't think anybody is at the moment, because you have this blended learning, of course, of human and technology. Now, this is certainly also, on the one hand, you can create inclusion by having all the same tools for everybody, but as obviously the way we use it as humans, it will be, of course, different. So these are, I think, aspects you need to identify in education broadly. How do you deal with this blended learning to create this international classroom where people have the same chances, the same opportunities, the same technology, the same literacy of technology, the same opportunities to use it, because as it shows here on the picture on the top here, it showed it's all about online at the moment, primarily. So again, here, these are aspects in the educational environment that you need to address to create this well-being and belonging. All kind of challenges here, and indeed the teach and the learn here is more than an optical illusion on the left upper corner. It's what we're all dealing with at the moment in academia. I think those of you who are in academia and the public, you know what I'm talking about. Big challenges we have. Okay, we could, Joanna, we could have a few questions if there are any at the moment. Have a natural break, otherwise you get
Yes.
bored.
Yes, Vincent, thank you so much for the input so far. There is no chance to get bored.
Okay, thank you.
It's wonderful. Also, the questions and comments that appear in the chat window. So let me start with the first one. Would you move from interdisciplinary to multidisciplinary and to transdisciplinary approach?
So well, the first was multi.
Interdisciplinary to
Yeah.
multidisciplinary to transdisciplinary.
Okay. All right. That the question was, how do you move?
Or if you would move,
Or
yes,
if I would move. Okay.
yeah.
Now, first of all, I think we need to define what they are. The
Mhm.
inter and the multi. We know that the inter is more or less, yeah, this motion of like intercultural versus multicultural. I think they could, if I may take the analogy with multicultural and intercultural, I'm not too sure here was what was it? Disciplinary
Transdisciplinary, yeah.
would be here. To be honest, well, we usually talk in academia of multidisciplinary, where I think we should talk more about inter. I would agree with that because it's more inter, maybe trans. It's not like the multi that stand alone. No, it's to make them move together. So I would agree that I would use more interdisciplinarity, yeah, instead of multi. Yeah, that maybe I'm not answering the question, but I certainly it needs to be inter and not multi. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
thank
in
you.
this respect, I would move from multi to inter. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, thank you very much. Then we have also the comment that the reflection as a part of assessment is a very interesting idea. And the question, the corresponding question from another participant. So how do you develop in the students the metacognitive competences for reflection?
Yeah, I explained that a bit in this article. In a nutshell, you can work on the individual level to create the right. I will talk about that, of course, when I talk about inclusion, the next aspect of the creating the safe psychological environment, certainly on the individual level. So make sure that the people feel at ease, comfortable as individual, and then you can create a more collective process by teaching, developing individual professional skills, collective professional skills. I will say that a few things on that later. So I think for me, it's just again to work on both levels, individual, collective level, and to make sure that first of all, the people will develop this self-inclusion, that they develop self-confidence, competence and confidence, that they feel safe to embark, to join, to onboard the group. Okay, so first individual and then the group. I think this is very important to see that. And that's by coaching, of course, the group. That coaching the individual and then coaching the group. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Vincent. There is one more question that goes a little bit in this direction as well. So, it addresses also your experience as practitioner, as academic teacher. How do you actually guide your students into online learning in such a way that they aren't simply finding what they are looking for? So, we are talking about unconscious bias. I guess this is the
Okay.
challenge all of us face.
Gee, yeah,
Yeah,
that could be the topic of another seminar,
yeah.
webinar. What do I do? Well, first of all, you need to give a framework. Okay. Yeah, good, large question. You need to give a framework to the students you have, the group, and make sure that the group are that everybody on the same wavelength. And I said before, the slide you can still see here, and this importance of the interface between blending and human. So make sure that that framework is taken care of. They all have the same access. Okay. So let's say that the physical and technical environment is taken care of. Let's try to have that first, and then look at each individual, because everybody will have another story. Each individual is different, have other needs, learning needs. You did this online learning, so you need to move from teacher-centered to learner-centered, which is the teacher will withdraw in a way. What I often do is to apply the reverse classroom, the flipped classroom, so they learn let's say, some theory online. Now, at the moment, it is online anyway. And then when it's more in class or on site or online, and you would do more the practical thing, the exercises. So that's a way to move from this teacher-centered to this learner-centered, and one of the many ways. But again, and this works towards inclusion, certainly. Let's say professional inclusion, academic inclusion, cognitive inclusion. Yeah. But that's not, of course, not something you can just snap one day to the other. So, but again, make sure that the framework, the environment is taken care of first. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
So Vincent, when I listen to you, yeah, and also to your examples, I immediately think of this ecology of learning, so that we create spaces where this mutual understanding
yeah,
can be established, and really mutual learning from each other. It doesn't really matter
absolutely.
teacher,
Yeah,
student, but also student, teacher. So really this this completely new approach. And corresponding with this, there is a wonderful question which is actually country specific. How do we get China on board? You know, so we are talking about this paradigm shift. And should we simply concentrate on developing mega competencies in our Chinese students? Or what would you suggest? Keeping in mind that obviously this hierarchies over there, also in the teaching context, are much,
yeah.
much higher than in our
Okay.
environment in Europe, so to say.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good one. First of all, I would not say, okay, let's, I would say we've had Chinese students for many, many years at university, technology, engineering, for many years. And they are just part of the group. Okay, I would say I would not stigmatize or individualize them so much in the learning process. It's true that very often they have different learning procedures. They still very much learn a lot of things by heart. They reproduce indeed what they learn, and certainly they're not necessarily are very critical thinkers. And we have a lot of critical thinking, design thinking in this respect in our curricula. So I agree with that they might not be the most apt or ready to do that. They're not also not very used to having brainstorm sessions because of the hierarchy. You like Japanese as well, I'm generalizing here. They tend to wait until the boss would say something to embark on an answer. So certainly this may not be the easiest way for them to develop challenge-based learning, for example, brainstorm, whatever. But I would not consider them first as an exception. No, they're very often part of the group. Well, I think what is needed is just to make sure that you make it international classroom. You make sure that they don't stick together. But this also counts for whether they are Chinese, they are whatever they are. Make sure that those nationalities don't stick together. That's the role of the teacher, and make sure that it's a real diverse class, international classroom, with diversity in the working groups, in the way they're seated class, etc. So I think this is the most important thing to do. And then they may need some attention, certainly, maybe more than others, but I would not not put them apart from the group. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Vincent. I can imagine you would like to proceed right
Yes.
now with your presentation. Before you do so, there is one more beautiful question actually that
Okay.
relates more to the context and the theme of our webinar today. So, you know, this beautiful metaphor of diversity, inclusion, and belonging refers to the party, dancing party.
Yeah.
So diversity is being invited to the party,
Yes.
inclusion is being asked to dance, yeah, and of
Yes.
course belonging is knowing to dance, or the dance moves, even being able to wish certain music and this music is played. Well-being is liking and respecting your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Or what would you suggest? This is the question.
The question is
So this is the question, what would you suggest? Yeah, because there is this
why?
metaphor
Yeah.
described by one
Yeah.
of our participants, by
Yeah.
Pamela. And yeah, the question is, what would you suggest? Would you add anything to this
I'll come to that in a
comparison?
minute. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
perfect.
come to that in a
Wow.
minute. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go on. Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Joanna. Let me continue. Yeah. Indeed, this diversity. Now. Of course, inclusion. The first I was fooling you. It was not including. It was intercultural. Obviously, I needed to set the framework. Now we move to inclusion after the diverse other areas of attention. Inclusion, obviously. So maybe just repeat myself here, but it's in contrast to diversity. It's a choice you make, action you take, something you deal with actively. Yeah, a behavior you adopt, or a goal you pursue. Yeah. So clearly, it's not something that you just let happen. It will not happen. It may, but it will not happen just by itself. So you need to take action clearly. And I often quote Fons Trompenaars here. I like this kind of dichotomy here, the dialectics between diversity and inclusion. Inclusion in what you share, and diversity in what you don't share. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. To move forward, yes, here we go. Of course, you have this famous quote by Werner Myers. We all know it. I think diversity is being united to the party, including being asked to dance. And indeed, I will certainly argue that you can go beyond that. Yeah. But first of all, I'd like to give my personal approach to that as well. What is inclusion? This is what we doing this Chinese proverb, teachers open the door, but you must answer by yourself. I think this is when I tell that to Chinese students, many of them know this quote and this proverb. I think it's a nice one, and this is certainly one we certainly apply in my education environment. We make sure that they have the safe environment, the psychological safe environment for studying in the international classroom, for example. So make sure that they will be able to enter the room, but we open the door indeed, but we don't take them by the hand and have them enter the room. That would be too much. So we facilitate, we fabricate, we set up the environment, the right environment, context, setting, but they will have to enter through by themselves. So that's also a way to include themselves. First of all, self-inclusion, self-confidence that will have to develop before at the reflection stage. And now they are strong enough to be able to enter the room by themselves. Because it is indeed about this creating this psychological safety environment. So that's how I would also personalize more the way I look at inclusion, whether it's in a classroom, whether it is indeed in general in business. Just a little bit on that on this online on-site, because nowadays we're switching all the time, mainly online, and how to create that's not so obvious at all. We have to show a lot, maybe more of that mutual trust, empathy, tolerance, open-mindedness as needed, and when we don't see the people. When we are now online, like you and me, I don't see you, but you see me. So you see, at least you use two senses. You see me and you hear me. I only see Joanna here, so I only have my two senses working on with Joanna, and the rest of you I don't see. I don't even hear you. I'm talking to the screen. So this is very often our online work, our online communication. I think this is something we must realize. We're not on the 5 sense basis that we usually have when we are on site dealing with people. So I think this is important to realize, and that makes this process of inclusion even more difficult. We need to compensate, as we know, this kind of social distancing with distance socializing, that try to find the right balance between both, and that makes it more difficult to realize. So extra challenge due to the online. And I will say a few words as well about that in the next level. Okay, yeah, testing. You've been now for a while in this diversity, whether it's classroom or group. You've been functioning, you've been evolving, you've been learning, you've been working, studying, and now at some time it's time to test. How far have you gone, and assess that. Learning style, for example. Are you able to join the group in, for example, more autonomous learning styles? Are you able to participate in brainstorm sessions, in whatever? And by doing this, you at the stage you need, of course, to have learned to learn professional skill. This is the answer I was saying before, the question before. You need to develop professional skills. You often hear the word soft skills. I don't like the word too much. I call that professional skill. I think it's better in this kind of approach here. So first of all, address the awareness level, whether it's intercultural, whether it's diversity, whatever level it is, the awareness, and then the adaptation and the career development, which is basically what we are supposed to do in education, to develop the employability. Because another concept which would take another webinar, but the employability, because the ultimate level is to make our students employable on the technical level, on the content level, but also on the skills level. Okay, so we need to deliver graduates who are employable in the world of today, which is, I suppose, a world of diversity and inclusion, and that need to be able to indeed work on the inclusivity, collaboration, engagement, to be employable on both on technical level and on the social, psychological, individual, personal level. This is the ultimate goal, of course. So if you create the right environment for inclusion, in a way, it's the ultimate goal of employability will come more or less naturally. And then this, the skills. When I was preparing this webinar, I was thinking of maybe withdrawing this slide because it says 2020 and we are in 21, so it looks old-fashioned, but it doesn't, because where are we now, folks? This was, you probably have seen this picture earlier, and the 21st century skill. I think this was mainly like 10 years ago. And in 2020, we want to make sure that we all had those skills at work to be able to function socially and professionally. Now, look at number 1, 2, 3. Okay, fine. Cross-cultural competency. Number 4, important that it's there. We like that at SIETAR. Transdisciplinary. Okay, here we have it. Design mindset, and then cognitive development. And then number 10, the virtual collaboration. Can you imagine that 10 years ago, virtual collaboration was maybe not the most important thing. It was number 10. I think they're more like ranked until that. Now, nowadays in 2020, we know 21, the virtual collaboration has become now more or less one of the most important skills, whether they are professional, social, personal. Yeah, that's what we need to develop. The new skill is to be able to switch from online on site. And I like this picture because I look at how this man and woman, I think, are holding each other's hand, like grasping their hands, like, don't leave me, right? Stay with me. This kind of metaphorically, the need we have to also be on site, to also be in real life. So that's why I like this. So this is certainly for me the most important skill at the moment, this developing virtual collaboration, online skills, communication, etc. Because what we need indeed, and this is what I'm bringing, the resilience, we need the resilience here, okay? Because it's not enough to just have those skills. We need to also be resilient. What is resilience? I wrote an article on LinkedIn as well for that, but just in a nutshell, and this is like a muscle you train not to strain. So first of all, you need to train this muscle. But the problem is that we didn't train it before. We were living before, when everything was normal. We were living before the pandemic, and everything was normal. And we had those muscles which were not trained. And then the pandemic arrived, and now we are 9 months ahead, and we didn't train that muscle, the resilience, so much. Some people have, of course, more than others. But in general, we didn't. So that's the danger, the challenge we have, to train it, but not to strain it. And that's very important. So indeed, very important. So this VUCA should also be VUCA, because the VUCA is fine, the new VUCA, but you need to add the resilience to it, because otherwise it doesn't work. Okay. Now this all will, I think you realize, we all bring us to inclusion and to the next level, which is indeed the U now. Okay, now we've had those 8 areas that I've identified. Again, and I didn't claim to be exhaustive. You may have other ideas, and please share the ideas of other areas we need to take care of in this extending the paradigm. Now we arrive at the stage we want to develop the sense of belonging, and that right here, extending the paradigm, we've taken the reality of diversity, we've made the right choice and action to create inclusion, and now we want to have, of course, some result with belonging, and ultimately reach the stage of integration, which will be this well-being, where people collectively, individually feel this well-being. And this is not what it says here. This the dilemma is here, to belong or to belonging. That's the real question indeed. That's the issue that all expats have, the syndrome of expats. They need to belong to the new environment, otherwise they are longing for going back home. And that's not the idea. This is more than a pun on words here, right? This is a very serious aspect of expats, of culture shock, of homesickness, etc., which can lead, of course, not to inclusion, but to exclusion, clearly. Yeah. And then I like to add here this concept of neighborliness and proximity, which has been developed by well, it's a European project. We learn. I'm not sure Maura Di Mora is here because she's leading this project, European project. Maura. So this I want to refer to that because this we learn to this neighborliness, and we learn to become part of the whole by being very active locally and to rediscover our own environment and this neighborliness. Yeah, and there are lots of initiatives taken around the world, and I'm sure you're also part of all of those neighborliness initiatives in which we concentrate on the very local level and inclusiveness on a local level.
Yes,
Okay, now
Vincent,
diversity.
let me
Yes.
just disturb you shortly. Maura is with us, and actually
Okay.
she's also, putting her hand up so that she would
Okay.
like to also ask a question or contribute.
Yeah.
Maura, would you like to contribute in the chat window, or you would like to have the spotlight? How shall we do it? Decide, please, and in the meantime, Vincent, please go ahead.
Let's continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
She can put the question at the end as well, of course.
Yeah.
So diversity, belonging, right? Having a seat at the table, inclusion having a voice, and belonging is having that voice be heard. I like this. Liz and Molly, apparently two 12 years old girls that had this very genius metaphor. I think I like it. My own thing is what I. As you said in the question, I extended the paradigm, extended the metaphor of the diversity by Werner Myers. So you are at the party, and this sense of belonging is when you feel safe and self-confident enough to ask the DJ to play your favorite song, knowing it will also please the other dancers. Now, this is for me at the party. I'm extending the metaphor of Werner Myers to the belonging, this sense of belonging that you feel self-confident, socially, psychologically, so confident that you feel safe to ask this your favorite song. Now, whether it's karaoke, or whether it's dancing on the dance floor, whatever, you feel safe and you can profit from the song, knowing that's very important. You belong to the group, and they will also enjoy your song. Now, that's for me the sense of belonging. Now, again, there are lots of initiatives to do that. It's to go deeper and broader in the sense of having reached inclusion. It's a deeper level. All right, and then finally, yeah, a few more slides, and then hand it over to you, Johanna. Inclusion, belonging, create well-being. What is well-being? Is of course more than health. It's not about health. It's about mental health, psychological health, obviously, individually, collectively, social role you have, how to anticipate culture shock, how to create the right environment for self-reflection, for belonging to a community, mentally, psychologically, and just a little bit of a very short sideline on neurodiversity as well. We haven't talked much about disabilities like dyslexia, for example. If I think of students, the neurodiversity also should be addressed at this level, certainly even before, where you make sure that those suffering from disabilities can, of course, be part of the whole of the community, and that you clearly address also the neurodiversity here. But that's a very short topic here. I don't want to expand on that because we don't have time. And I'm not a specialist of that either, anyway. And then to finish, I've put again Carolyn Reef's model. You may remember, and I'd like to comment it. I think it makes some sense, and I'd like to make some comments dealing with the pandemic. So this need to believe that your life has purpose and meaning. This is certainly what is now impacting a lot of people, and the doubt we have about what are we going to, this uncertainty. Remember, the not understanding, related to VUCA here as well, not understanding what's going on and what his life is about. Very often, young people, students have that this big doubts about what am I doing. The lack of autonomy, certainly as well, with this online communication a lot. People are left alone, are very often excluded. Or you don't have the autonomy necessary to be self-confident. So this autonomy on all levels. The personal growth, I would certainly like to link this to developing a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset here. Very important, I think, to be able to reconcile opposites, this personal growth of the growth mindset here as well, cognitively and mentally. Managing your life well, that's already been said in a way. This kind of how do you function at the moment, being isolated possibly, not knowing what tomorrow will be about, very often for young people, students, young professionals. Need to have positive relationships, try to exclude all the toxic relationships you may have. So try to focus on the positive people you may have around, and know yourself. Now, certainly the pandemic helped that. We always say to students, go abroad, because an international experience is something to help you develop knowing yourself. Certainly now here, I think that we get to know ourselves better through a crisis time. So I think Carol Riff's model certainly has some value here. If you put it in comparison with the local situation, the current situation at the moment. All right, just let me finish. Comfort zone, I think this is clear to us. Enjoy diversity. Now, this is not only a joke. I'm putting robots here because now within 5 to 10 years, we will be dealing with robots. They will be diverse as well. I see my University of Technology, we already have robots doing all kinds of things. I don't have yet an assistant to teach for me, but I think within 5 to 10 years, we will have lots of things done by robots. We already have in the health system, lots of robots, also in the Netherlands. Our robots are world champion in football at my university. So they can football like not like Johan Cruyff yet, but still they can football quite well. So this is more than a joke, and this is a warning. I think within a few years we will have to deal with robots as well in diversity, not only with people and the classical roles we all have. And then how do I look at the future of diversity, managing diversity? I think there are 3 areas which are very important at the moment, what I can observe. Artificial intelligence, no doubt, is part of our lives now more and more. And diversity, inclusion, think of the way nowadays you can, recruiters, you can have you can apply for a job and you will have a robot, first of all, asking you a question, or selecting your CV. So already now in recruitment, you can see artificial intelligence coming in, robots or just human beings. Gamification, something we like at SIETAR, obviously. I think this is also in educational inclusion, of course. Professional, educational, cognitive inclusion, gamification is important. Yeah. And then the neuroscience is, of course, also another area like SIETAR likes a lot at the moment. Certainly the neurosciences are the plasticity of our brain, how we adapt to the context, to the inclusive of exclusive context, very much to lead us through neurosciences. So I think these three areas are very important. And I'll finish here. Any question? You have my email. I put this article again that Joanna has put in the chat. Thank you very much. Dziękuję, Joanna. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
everybody.
merci
And
bien.
here we go. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you very cordially, Vincent. I'm just following the chat window and everybody is really delighted. Very inspirational presentation, lots of input, fantastic content. There are actually still questions.
Okay,
and
of course, I hope
that's
so.
why I also allowed myself to put your email address into the chat window. So it's easier for the participants to copy it and immediately to write an email to you. And actually, maybe also those who wish to have your presentation, they can also contact you via email. It's the easiest way. So thank you very much to all our participants. Stay tuned because SIETAR Europa is having obviously more events for you. Our next webinar is taking place on the 16th of February. And it's about modern Russia, destroying myth and stereotypes. So stay tuned, very interesting theme. Then, of course, save the date, the 12th of February, we've got our next cross-cultural coffee break. This time with the title, Lost in Connection, what differentiates a great virtual space leader from a great physical office leader? So, you know, it goes also a little bit in this direction, how to actually distinguish between these competencies in the virtual and face-to-face setting, especially in the leadership context. And referring to your ideas and almost your last chart, Vincent, regarding neuroscience and also gamification, we've got good news. On the 17th of February, we kick off a new series of events for SIETAR Europa. And this time it's again very interactive. We are going to play games. So very warm welcome to our intercultural playground. And save the date, the 17th of February at 5 o'clock. 17, easy to remember. So stay tuned. Once again, very warm thank you to you, Vincent. Have a beautiful evening and a very warm
everybody.
Thank you to everyone who has just joined us.
And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Yeah, and see you around online, most likely. Some of us on site. And have a nice evening.
Please be so nice and also pay attention to your screen because we've got feedback for you that appears on your screen immediately when the webinar closes. So please still invest a couple of minutes to answer the questions. Thank you very much for your support and see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.